What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Save Continue podcast, episode 98. My name is Tommy Shelby. With me, as always, Mr. Ryan Robinson.
Hi!
Ms. Shanee Howard.
Hi.
And if you don't know, for the next couple episodes, we're trying out different formats. This week is mine, so get ready for the ride of your fucking life.
Nice.
We are available on all sorts of podcast services, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Go out there, find us, listen, watch, enjoy.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Now,
Yeah, we gotta say that.
first thing that is different, each episode will start with one trivia question. So, if you guys look over here, tell me,
Pass.
Twisted Metal.
who is that?
I don't know who that is.
I can't.
Well, one of you has to get it. So I'm going to give some clues.
Okay.
He is one of the founders of that game company.
Oh, Genova Chin.
Genova Chen. That is correct.
That's actually literally the first time I've ever seen his face.
Really? You never watched The Tester or anything like that?
Nope.
Okay, so as winner of today's trivia question, Ryan,
Yes, sir.
you get the right to use "Can I finish?"
Nice.
Which means that if at any time Shanee or I interrupt you,
Uh-huh.
you can say, "Can I finish?" and we cannot speak for the next 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
10 minutes.
Oh.
Unless Ryan says, go ahead and speak.
Okay.
You also have the right at the end of the show to plug anything you like, anything that you've been enjoying lately, whether it's video game related or not.
Cool.
Okay?
Oh, I now I want to win more. Oh.
We'll play more video games, I guess.
Well, I feel like the trivia will help you learn at least, Shanee.
I-
Now you know what Genova Chen looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what game he made? What games
Flow?
he made? Yeah, have you played that?
Flower,
Have you played that?
I played
Cloud.
Flower.
Have you played that?
Journey.
Have you played that?
Play that.
Okay. So let's get into the meat of the show. Today we're talking about remakes, reboots, reimaginings, and whatnot. Ryan,
Yes, sir.
what's one of your favorite remakes or reboot? You can even go remaster. We can throw those in there too.
Okay. So, I gotta go with DMC right off the bat.
So we brought this up recently because I've been playing it recently.
Uh-huh.
Very divisive.
Yes. I think we talked about it last week, actually. A lot of people, prior to its release, they were really down on it just because of Dante's new look and, without knowing anything about how the game actually played.
Yeah.
And I was already, I was into it because it was a new Devil May Cry, so I was totally into it. But I had played, the year prior to that game coming out, I had played the first 3 Devil May Cry games, kind of in quick succession.
Sure.
And I very much got used to the formula of all 3 of those games because they're actually all 3 of those games kind of share the same formula throughout. And playing DMC was almost like it. Of course, it had its similarities to the predecessors, but it was almost like a whole new franchise.
Yeah.
Just the way the combat worked, the way it flowed so much better. The tone was a lot more, I wouldn't say serious, but
It's not serious.
yeah, but it was very much because as I said last week, Dante very much presented himself like a frat boy,
Yeah.
guzzling his beers and
Like, you remember the beginning of that game where, something happens to his trailer?
yeah,
And he's jumping through the air
Yeah.
naked?
And he-
And, things are covering his ding-dong conveniently?
yeah, like pizza slices
Yeah.
and baseball bats.
Then he gets into his pants.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I don't think it takes itself too seriously.
No, I like that a lot. I like that. I don't know. That game was really awesome, and it very much seems like we're not going to get another one. Although I would love to see them continue with that.
I think Devil May Cry 5 is more likely. Sinead, did you play DMC?
Yes, I did.
What did you think of it?
I liked it. It was pretty. I liked it since it was so linear. It just felt. It just. I don't know. I felt like it was a nice flow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also I'm a huge MMO and JRPG fan. Anything that is it takes a lot for me to be annoyed by. I feel by repetitiveness.
That's funny that you tie those two things to those genres. Like being annoyed is directly tied to MMOs and JRPGs.
Well, like both of them have a lot of points that are really, really, really repetitive. Like
Yeah.
you gotta grind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is something else that I didn't touch on before is that the linearity of DMC, because with the previous games you were like wandering around a lot, like
Yeah.
finding like different things because they were still very much taking cues from the Resident Evil games in that regard, and DMC was kind of like you just running through the levels and
Yeah.
like killing.
Well, the first
guys.
Devil May Cry was actually intended to be a Resident Evil game.
So I'd heard.
Yeah. Shanee, what do you think makes a good reboot or a good remake of a game?
So reboot or remake? I feel like I definitely feel like keeping the spirit of the game, keeping why people liked it, but improving upon.
Graphics.
No, I mean, yeah, graphics do help a lot of people with immersion, but yeah, improving upon like immersion of what's already there, and if you can make it prettier or like have better mechanics,
Sure.
but still feel like this is the game I'm playing. I'm getting all the feels from last time. I think that marks this like success.
Okay.
I'd like to add an addendum to my answer.
Go ahead.
Doom.
I was about to say, I can't believe you didn't
Can I
say
finish?
Doom.
Damn. It is now 11:56. Shanee? Silence.
So Doom was it was a surprise to me, based on what I had seen with Doom 3, and I did not expect them to do to be so close to that game, to that franchise's roots with this reboot. Of course, the game is gorgeous. It maintains the fast-paced gameplay of its predecessors, whereas Doom 3 was very much like it was more survival horror than not survival horror, but it was more of like an atmospheric horror game.
Sure.
Than Doom 1 and 2. And it was like a great way to reintroduce existing fans to the franchise and also get, new fans of the franchise too.
Yeah.
And it's just everything about that game. It's probably my favorite shooter of this generation.
It's interesting because it stays pretty faithful to the source material, while at the same time, like, kind of heavily deviating from that formula.
Yeah.
Like, it is much more open
Yeah.
than the old Doom games.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great, also like the multiplayer. While there is multiplayer, and there is a crowd of people that like it.
Yeah.
I
did not care for
I
it.
think there's a lot of people that were disappointed in it.
Yeah. Shanee, you may speak.
I thought the rules were that Tommy and I both can't talk if you say can
No,
I finish.
it's whoever interrupted the person.
Well, what if both of us did?
No. Plus, what, Ryan's just going to talk for 10 minutes on his own?
That's what I thought.
I don't want to do that.
Okay, so I have two that I want to bring up.
I feel like these rules are rigged.
Well, we can discuss, all right? This is the beta episode,
Yeah.
Shanee, all right?
This is the shakedown stage. Okay.
I have two that I want to discuss. One is Mortal Kombat 9, and the other is King's Quest, the more recent King's Quest. I think these two games do something really interesting. One, they are technically remakes of the source material.
Right.
They're at the same time reboots of the source material and at the same time sequels
Right.
to the source material.
Right.
Mortal Kombat 9 does pick off where the last Mortal Kombat ended.
Right.
It just goes back to the beginning at the same time. King's Quest is, him telling stories of his adventures to his granddaughter. He is an old man at this point.
Yeah.
So they are sequels, but they are also remakes. They are also reboots.
Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah, Christopher Lloyd. I think they both do all three extremely well. And I think it's smart to strive to do that. I don't think it's necessary. But if you can make it a sequel, you can keep fans of the series that really want that canon,
Sure.
want that old canon to remain.
Yeah.
While at the same time rebooting your franchise.
Right. I do like how Mortal Kombat 9 kind of was able to tie the first three games into like one cohesive storyline.
Right.
Which is, and to be fair, like I had never really cared about the story of Mortal Kombat previously.
Sure.
And them actually crafting a a narrative between those three games, and through the course of one game was actually really neat. And then it kind of laid the groundwork for narrative driven single player campaigns in fighting games,
Yeah.
which is really neat too.
Have you ever met somebody that was like really into the lore of Mortal Kombat?
I have not.
I
Well, not since I was in elementary school.
no.
Oh yeah, no, those I've run in a couple of those people, and I really want to go and find like a video, so anybody like that's listening knows of one and can send it to me. A video that goes over all of the history of them, because some of the things that people have told me about the lore of it is nanners,
Yeah.
and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So like it gets there eventually.
What I think is cool, I mean, this is kind of going off topic, but I think it's neat that like there are many characters throughout that franchise that exist because of rumors and speculation.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's cool that Kano is Australian because of the movie.
that is cool.
Yeah.
Shanae, what's your favorite remake?
Favorite remake? I was gonna say probably the best one that I can think of is Doom. But
But is that your favorite?
my favorite, well, if we're gonna do it for mine's lame. I feel like mine's gonna be super obvious.
That's okay.
What is it?
Kingdom Hearts 1.5 and 2.5.
But those are more remasters. I'm talking
Well,
about like
you
a
said-
remake.
Okay, well, you said remasters for
They are in the conversation, but in this question, I want to know remake. What is your favorite?
I don't know.
You don't know? That's okay. So there are a couple of games that I find questionable. DuckTales Remastered is not a remaster of the original DuckTales game.
That's a remake, isn't it?
Is it though? Because if that's a remake, I think you could give DuckTales Remastered. I think you could call that a remake because there are things in that game that are not in the original.
Sure.
Level layouts aren't exactly the same.
Because I feel like we looked at Shadow of the Colossus at E3, and
So there are differences, right? But like
Oh, I am really excited about that.
okay, let me ask you this then.
Okay.
Super Mario All Stars.
yeah.
That technically is a remake, right? They use none of the old assets.
Sure.
But they're the exact same games, right? It's not like, so what do we consider that? Do we consider that a remake?
I guess because I feel like the criteria that we had been measuring that on is because we, like I was gonna say, we looked at Shadow of the Colossus at E3,
Right.
and we weren't calling it a remaster because it very much looked like new assets that they were
It is
doing,
ground up, right?
right? So we weren't calling that a remaster; we were calling it a remake.
But we don't know what that game's going to be.
Sure. Now with with All Stars, it's kind of hard to say because I think that the criteria that we've been using to gauge whether or not it's a remake or a remaster is just whether or not they're using new assets. Like, for example, The Last of Us, that's a remaster.
Right.
Because they're using all the same assets, they're just up-resed them, right? Whereas All Stars, I want to go ahead and say that's a remake.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call that a remake.
I think I'd have to agree.
Yeah. Just because, I think that even if they're using, even though the level layout is the same and like everything like happens the same way in all of the games, I think that using those new assets can still very much make them feel brand new again.
Yeah.
And so I would call those games remakes for sure.
Okay. Talk about Tomb Raider. Talk about the newest Tomb Raider. Not Rise of, but the Tomb Raider, just Tomb Raider.
Sure.
Tell me about that. How do you feel about that?
I think it's excellent.
Yeah. Why is it excellent? What does it do that makes it excellent?
I like that the two most recent Tomb Raider games they feel a lot more grounded, and they've both made Lara into a much more believable and more relatable character.
And more well-rounded.
Right. I think that there's a better emphasis on storytelling than the previous games had.
Yeah.
The other games did have the themes of all Tomb Raider games have been exploration and level traversal, but I feel like with the newer Tomb Raiders, it just felt like getting through the levels, using all her different tools to get from one place to another just felt so much more satisfying.
Sure.
The gunplay was markedly better. And not even talking, on a cross-generational level. It's just the gunplay in the previous Tomb Raider games to me was never fun. That was always the least.
Even at the time.
Yeah, even at the time, that was always my least favorite part of those games.
Okay.
Whereas in the newer games, that like I very much look forward to those engagements.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and even and like Shanee said, she's like more well-rounded because I think very much like in the previous games, she was just marketed as like this.
Sexy lady.
That is actually not how she was marketed.
Not marketed, but like she was kind of just she was perceived as just because of the way that we kind of, I guess the way
triangular boobs
that we looked at video games at the time.
Sure.
And
I mean, people saw this big boobed lady and ran with it, right?
Sure.
Like, I don't know if you remember the Lara Croft like bikini spreads in magazines.
Yeah. Gross.
Which that development team has since come out and apologized for, said it was something they never wanted to happen.
Yeah.
Shanee, did you ever play Duke Nukem Forever?
Yeah.
What did you think of Duke Nukem Forever?
I had fun with it. Mean, it's obviously satire. I felt like it was like the old ones. I was fine with it. Then again, I didn't when I played it and beat it, I didn't actually like pay for it. So
okay.
I didn't put money down on it, so I was pretty okay with it.
So with old characters like these, like Duke Nukem and Lara Croft and anybody from Mortal Kombat, how do you take characters that feel like they are definitely part of a certain time and successfully update them? Because like I feel like with Mortal Kombat, those characters are just as goofy and stupid as they ever were. They're just as 90s as they ever were. Same thing with Duke Nukem.
I mean, you just move the stereotype of what that guy was at that time, figure out the stereotype of this time, and just change that character to that. Like, just move it from one stereotype to the next. Keep it stupid. That's like, I mean, I guess it's like probably the easiest way to like make them into modern times and still have the same feel to them.
Do you think that...
I don't feel like that's what they did with Duke Nukem, but...
Do you think that they benefit from being so dated? Like, you can look at those characters and say those are some 90s characters. Do you think that benefits them now?
With certain groups, yes.
Yeah.
It just depends on who your audience is and who you're trying to market this towards. If you're trying to do it towards a new audience, probably not going to hit them. Like,
Sure.
It's probably not good. Like, I mean, they may end up loving it
But I mean, like with Mortal Kombat 10, there's definitely people that haven't played Mortal Kombat before that are playing that game.
Yes, but I also do feel like with fighting games, it is much different than story-driven games.
Because in fighting games, characters are typically kind of silly.
And also, like, very rarely do I meet people who play fighting games for the storyline.
True. That's true.
It's for the competitive scene or for having fun with their friends or having a game that you, like, your brothers or family can play and anybody can hop on and at least button mash.
Yeah. Okay. Ryan?
So.
Same question. How do you think you can take old characters and, successfully, by successfully I mean improve them to the point that it's marketable and you can make money off of this?
I don't think that as a character, I don't think that Duke Nukem has any place in the 21st century.
No.
I think that he was very much
Well, you saw a place for him. You bought bullets for him because of him.
Yeah, but then look at how I bought bullets for him because of Bulletstorm. I pre-ordered it just so for the novelty of. But I think that Duke Nukem is very much he is very much a product of his time. And the thing about Duke Nukem is that the games weren't cool because of Duke Nukem. They were cool because of the actual gameplay. Whereas, and so
I disagree. You don't think that in the 90s as a teenage boy seeing some big muscly dude with guns shooting up crazy fucking demons and throwing money at strippers, you don't think that was intended to be cool?
No, I think that
and that there were some teenage boys that thought that was cool.
I think very much that it was intended to be cool. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, anecdotally, I wasn't like when I was 12 years old, I didn't think he was a cool guy at the time. But like looking back, I just don't think that there's really a way to bring that character into the modern generation, especially considering the fact that it's largely believed by most people. I want to say most people, but there are a lot of people who believe that the action hero is dead. And Duke Nukem is very much an action hero archetype,
right.
And there isn't really a way to. It's really hard to modernize something like that like unless you're like super self-aware with it, which even still it's really hard to avoid going overboard with it to the point where it's just like, all right, let's reel it back. Whereas I think that with something like Mortal Kombat, fighting games really rely on the characters that inhabit them, and I think that Mortal Kombat is cool because of the characters that inhabit the game, and because of like their varied move sets and the presentation that they have. And with the later games, like we'd also talk about the personalities of these characters at this point, because in like Mortal Kombat 1 through 3, there was no personality for those characters. They kind of just existed in that game. Whereas I can actually say that I like this character in Mortal Kombat because I think his personality is funny or whatever.
Right. Character model's cool.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be.
And so I think that Mortal Kombat's transition into the modern game generation was probably a lot easier, just because of the way it's a little bit easier to modernize those characters, and I feel like they're a lot more malleable than Duke Nukem was, because I think that he kind of exists in this very rigid sort of like hyper macho sort of framework.
Sure.
It's kind of hard to deviate from that while still keeping that character intact. Whereas I think that the characters of Mortal Kombat, because when we came to Mortal Kombat 9, we were kind of working. It seemed very much like they were kind of working with a blank slate at that point. And they were kind of like, let's just rebuild these characters from the ground up. We're gonna keep the essence of what makes Scorpion, and the essence of what makes Johnny Cage, and kind of just build a personality on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they were largely successful with it.
Go ahead, Shanee.
This isn't like this isn't remake related necessarily, but the action hero stereotype. I mean, I feel like they definitely can transition some of it. I mean, look at Kratos now in the newest game.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Way different person.
Yeah.
I mean, but they transitioned it to like, oh, he has a reason to be so like ruthless. He has a son with him. They're giving him a softer edge without necessarily changing his character, and I think that it can be done well.
And while that game is a sequel, they have chosen to just call it God of War.
Yeah,
and
which is typically reserved for something like a remake.
Right, and it does have a drastically different feel to it.
Yeah.
Both in gameplay and,
So it might as well be a reboot at that point, I think. And I agree with you on Kratos because, but at the same time, I think that Kratos' inception, was, far removed from Duke Nukem's, because it was a very different. There were action heroes in 2005, right? But they're very different from the action heroes of the early to mid 90s.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that it would be impossible to bring a character like Duke Nukem to 2017 or 2018 or 2045 if they make another Duke Nukem, but
it has proved impossible for that character.
It's just he doesn't really fit anywhere.
Yeah.
He didn't even really fit into his own game. And then with Gearbox they tried again to put him into something else, and he doesn't really belong anywhere. And it's funny because he felt out of place in Bulletstorm, a game that is full of like meatheads.
I think part of that though is because they didn't bother changing dialogue.
Maybe. But I think even still, he still felt sort of felt out of place, and again, it's really weird to say that considering what the overall theme of that game is and what the other characters in that game are like.
Yeah, a lot of dick jokes and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think his time is kind of over. But that was a really good point about Kratos, because I didn't actually think about that, because he was very much what we came to know video game action heroes as. In the mid 2000s, I think.
Well, he's got that angry dad meter now, so I'm sure we'll see some of that old God of War in the new one.
It's probably just less sex.
Well, I mean, he carried himself through like 3 main entries with yelling.
Well, Ryan and I talked about this. There's been now 4, 5, 6 or 7 God of War games.
6, I believe.
And in every single one, there is QuickTime event sex, and we've discussed, will this new God of War have QuickTime event sex or not?
Yeah.
It's gonna be in a hut. The little boy's gonna be standing outside of it. You're just gonna see him uncomfortable.
No,
with
I
the
think that if they
sounds.
do, I think that if they do that,
Because it doesn't seem like it'll fit anymore, right?
I think that if they do the QuickTime sex event, it'll be him conceiving that boy.
I don't think so, but that would be hilarious.
Because there's 1, 2, 3, Ascension, Ghost of Sparta, Chains of War,
Chains of Olympus.
Chains of Olympus.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And the ones that aren't numbered, they also have QuickTime sex.
Yes.
Okay.
Shanee, the next few minutes are for you.
For you.
Talk to us about the Pokemon remakes. Leaf Green, Alpha Omega, all that shit.
Oh,
You
yeah.
play any of them?
Yeah, and of course, like Soul Silver, and all that too.
Tell me about them. Tell me what you like, what you don't like.
I've honestly, I've never had a problem with anything that Game Freak has done as far as like remakes or anything like that, or adding it to where, anything. I've always been like vaguely aware of the fact that Japan got different games than us when I first got my Pokemon games, and how it came out different than what I've been seeing, just like from like friends in like elementary school. So I always felt like we were getting kind of like different versions anyways when I first like was hearing about it. So I've never had a problem. I think that they've always been improved upon it. There's definitely some aspects to Pokemon games I have not taken advantage of, like the ribbon collecting, decorating thing they did in Silver. I think probably Soul Silver is the one I spent the most time with, just because that fucking milk tank and then that Lance with his goddamn Dragonairs.
So I don't know what you're talking about. It sounds fascinating.
Oh, so I keep forgetting that y'all do not
Yeah, I
play.
have no idea what you're
With,
talking about.
you know, you said that you feel like they've always improved. So, like,
Well, they've always...
you think Leaf Green is better. You think Soul Silver is better than the original versions?
Yeah, I mean, because I always viewed them as... I always viewed it as more Pokemon. Like, not necessarily like more Pokemon as in a numbered or a quantity, but like I just like I'm getting more. I'm just getting more Pokemon stuff, and
Right.
I've always been excited, and I've always been happy, and I've always been like, I've never felt disappointed by a Pokemon game. I've never started any new Pokemon game and being like, the other one was better. There's the times I'm like, I miss like this mechanic of it, and there's also been times where I'm like, I don't really want to do this part of it, but like. All I do is just not do that part of it.
Yeah.
Like, it
It doesn't force you to.
Or like I go play the other game.
Sure.
I mean, there's definitely times where I miss some of the simplicity of the like first couple generational games versus like what we have now with the IV training and like all of these like stat things. But yeah, I don't think they've ever really done. I don't think that a remake has ever done harm to the Pokemon, like continuity or line or anything.
I don't think so either. I mean, they obviously always sell well. Ryan, I think that you're the only one of us, I don't know, maybe Shanee played it, to have played the original Prey. Shanee, did you play that game? I played the demo for it, but that's it.
No.
Ryan, why do you think that the new Prey has not seen much success? Has not seen success on the way that Bethesda would have hoped?
I don't know, because I think that the major selling point of both the original Prey and the new one are, kind of innovative concepts and the first-person shooter. I think that perhaps the original Prey saw more success just because, people weren't doing a whole lot of interesting things with shooters back then. And at the time,
there was a ton of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that Prey at the time like really stood out because it was doing the whole, inverted gravity thing, and like you never know which way is up, and the whole teleportation thing.
Sure.
Because you gotta remember, like, this is like the whole thing with portals and everything that was cool, especially because at that time Portal wasn't out yet. So
Was it not? The first one? No?
I don't believe so. I could be wrong though. But even still, it was just doing a lot of things where that were different, and especially in a time where most of the shooters that we were getting at around when Prey came out they were like a lot of military-centric shooters, and a lot of it was like really straightforward. And I think that in the intervening 10 years, we've seen a lot of stuff, with we've seen a lot of things in first-person shooters now. We've seen a lot of blending of different genres in the first-person shooter space, and I think that perhaps, I just maybe Prey isn't not as interesting as it once was. Now that being said, I think that they still are building on like a pretty interesting premise with the new one. I also think that 2017 has seen a deluge of a lot of high quality games.
There's a lot of competition. Yeah.
And I think that it's up against more. I think Prey is up against more now than Prey was up against back in 2007.
Do you think that I'm not saying that the game isn't successful, but it's definitely not selling to the point that Bethesda wishes that it was.
Sure.
Do you think that it would be more successful if it had more ties to the original Prey, or at least some ties? Because from what I hear, there are no ties to the original Prey.
So I think that honestly, I think back to when the press was still covering Prey 2. And I think about, a lot of the concepts that were laid out in in what that game was going to be. And I think that overall, that was probably going to be a more interesting game than what this game turned out to be.
Mechanically, or?
I think it more thematically than anything. But I think that having ties to Prey 2, I don't think it would have helped that much, because I don't think that a lot of people, I could be wrong, but I don't think a lot of people are that nostalgic for the original Prey. Like at the time.
Oh no, it was the same thing we talked about with like Dreamcast and shit. Like, people act like they loved it, but nobody fucking bought it.
Yeah. So because at the time when Prey came out, and remember this is before BioShock had come out. So I was like, when I played Prey at the time, I was like, you know what, shooter of the year right here, shooter of the year. I'm calling it right now.
You have 2 collector's editions.
Yeah. So I'm still living in 2007, I guess. But it was such a fascinating game, and I think that if they built on the concepts or the themes that were set forth in Prey in the original Prey, I think that would have been really cool. But then again, I can't really say how well that would have aged, though.
Yeah.
I
think the mechanic of being on the ceiling would still hold up.
Yeah, sure. And it led to like a lot of really cool gameplay moments in that game.
Yeah.
Now I don't know that it would. I know that they could probably build on top of that and put some like really cool, interesting things around it, especially if they went the route of maintaining like the whole. Like the thing with like all the portals and everything, I think that they could have built a really cool direct sequel to that game. But that being said, I'm not sure that I'd want it.
Sure.
Because fairly recently, with like the past few years, I went back to the original Prey, and it doesn't hold up.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay,
I guess this one's for everybody. You got something, Shanee?
I just wanted to correct myself from earlier. I said I did the thing that I always do, which I just pull like names that are closest to it instead of saying the right ones.
Yeah.
It's not gonna matter to you.
Yeah.
But I realized after I said it, and I was like, I don't think I said the right names. So it's Whitney who had the milk tank. Not I said Courtney, and then, of course Lance.
Somebody would have caught that.
And Lance has a Dragonite, not Dragonair.
How dare you?
You monster!
How dare
I
you?
know. I just.
You call yourself a fan?
I know. Oh man. I'm so bad with names. I know what I mean.
Yeah, you're all right.
Okay, so this is for everybody. Specifically with remasters and HD collections and things of that nature.
Sure.
We've seen a lot, especially this generation, right? We saw the Nathan Drake collection, the BioShock collection,
right,
and Grand Theft Auto remastered, and fucking
Skyrim,
Last of Us, and Skyrim. Yeah, the list goes on, right?
Right.
Do you think that these games are getting re-released too soon?
Well, I think that I was definitely thinking about Grand Theft Auto, because Grand Theft Auto 5 came out in 2013.
Right.
And within like what? Because like in that same year, the PS4 and Xbox One came out.
Yep.
And within a year and a half of that game's release, we got a remaster of that game.
So here's where I'll defend them. One, the remasters of Grand Theft Auto 5 are more significant than most remasters that come out.
They do mechanical things.
Right, with the first-person shooting, more population, more animals, things of that nature.
Sure.
And they just called it Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah.
They didn't call it Grand Theft Auto 5 Remastered or HD. They just called it Grand Theft Auto 5.
Sure.
Um,
Now, with The Last of Us, I think... So, I'm of two minds with The Last of Us. So, The Last of Us came out in 2012?
13, the same year as Infinite.
Okay.
Bioshock Infinite. I don't know.
Okay. So, it's 2013 then.
Yeah.
So, I'm of two minds with that because, one, when Last of Us Remastered came out, I hadn't played the original release of that game.
I think that's the case with most people.
Yeah, I hadn't because when that game came out, I didn't have a PS3, so
Right.
I couldn't get I couldn't have played it. But I think that with games that people really love, I think that I feel like the sooner you can do something to make that game better in any way, like the better. Because improving the visuals just a little bit and getting that frame rate higher. I mean, I think that's great. Like if we're stuck at 30 before and you can make it 60 now.
See, so here's my thing with that. I don't think that. I'm glad The Last of Us Remastered exists.
Right.
I don't think that it's that improved from the PlayStation 3 version.
No.
As somebody who's played both, I don't think like it is a little bit. You get the DLC.
Yeah.
The frame rate's a little bit better.
I mean, there was memes about it,
but they're the
side
same.
by side comparisons.
Why I do think it is good is that it exposed that game to a much larger audience, and I don't think that's good for every game, but I think for a game that's that critically praised,
Sure.
to have had so few people play it upon its initial release, I think it's good to get it out.
Yeah.
Whereas something like the BioShock collection, I think is completely unnecessary.
Sure.
Yeah, I just feel like
I bought it, but
I feel like a lot of the remastered editions are just to like help fill your library for your new console.
Sure. I mean, it's smart for the publisher, right?
Oh no, I mean
when
it is.
This many people own a PlayStation 4 and people know the name BioShock, you're going to make money off of it.
Sure.
But is it good for the consumer?
It's also like people aren't gonna. A lot of less people are gonna ask about when the next AAA game is coming out. When you're pumping out, like, oh, you can now play Skyrim on your new console. You can now.
I disagree. I think I think it oftentimes leads to people asking when the new game is coming out because you saw this a lot with PlayStation 3, right? They released the Sly Cooper collection leading up to the next Sly Cooper game. They released the same thing with Ratchet and Clank, the same thing with the Team Eco collection, the same thing with Flow and Flower and all that. Like they released those to gauge interest in the new product.
All right, for Xbox One though, like as both consoles of Xbox One and PS4.
Yeah.
Xbox One, I'm just saying, like, if you can just like go to the store and be like, well, at least there's a selection on the wall, and like I can pick. Oh, I haven't been able to play Grand Theft Auto 5 in a couple of years.
Sure.
Or Grand Theft Auto 5, whatever has been newly released as far as a remaster from a previous generation.
Right.
It's like, oh, I can play this. Cool. This is a game to play instead of like sitting there and be like, oh, I'm like, when's the next Call of Duty or Battlefield or whatever genre or whatever game you're excited about. It at least gives you something to play in the meantime. And I feel like that's a lot of the purchases are just like for some of the are not a lot. I feel like there's definitely a good portion of purchases that are just like that kind of group and crowd.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Skyrim served a bigger purpose than to get people to buy it again. I think that it brought to console gamers what we had never gotten to see before, which was mods.
But in such a limited way.
But a limited way is better than in no way at all.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's true.
And
that's true.
And I think that it was a very cool thing for people who don't game on PC. For them to be able to experience that in some capacity. Now, by no means, and as you said, it's a limited way, so it vastly pales in comparison to what you can do on the PC version.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to customize your experience at all to a much greater degree than console gamers had been able to see before is still really cool.
Yeah.
And so it was the thing about Skyrim, and and with Skyrim and Grand Theft Auto, they were functionally different from their original console releases.
In that aspect,
In
sure.
that aspect,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same game still,
Right.
but there was more functionality added to both of those
I
titles.
mean, it adds more than a piece of DLC.
Sure.
Yeah.
Whereas
Typically.
yeah.
Typically.
Then, and I'm wondering, now as somebody who has played at least part of the original franchise, like, what are your feelings on the Insane trilogy?
I really like it, and I think it's a smart thing to do. I hope that they do more of it. I hope most companies with a long lineage can do more of this. I like the fact that it's like Mario All-Stars, right? You're using the same wireframe. You're using the same hitboxes.
Right.
You were literally just making the game look better. And I don't think that's necessary for last-gen games, but for games that are over a decade old, sometimes 2 decades old, I think it's pretty legit.
Yeah.
And I've been playing those lately.
Like the originals, or?
Well, no, the re-release.
Okay.
And goddamn, hard as balls.
With the Crash one? Games?
Yeah. Crash 1, man, those fucking bridges are still just awful. But I like that. They kept the bad. They wanted to be true to what those games were, and they very much are. The wireframe is the same on those games. It's literally just the visuals.
Yeah.
There are the only differences, like gameplay differences, is that like you can now see how many boxes you've broken in a level.
Cool.
You can be Coco Bandicoot if you want to be, but like other than that, same.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate. I'd love to see that. If they did something like that with like fucking Ninja Gaiden or whatever, like that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk just real quick about spiritual successors. We all know my hatred for Mighty Number 9.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you paid for that.
Yeah. Games like Yooka-Laylee, Mighty Number 9, Bloodstained, these are not remakes. These are not remasters.
Sure.
They're not sequels even, but they are what these people are legally allowed to do, right?
Sure.
How do we feel about these? Because I fucking love them.
I don't think that there's any reason to feel negatively about them at all, especially if they're like with Bloodstained and what we now know as an unfortunate event of Mighty Number 9. I think that leading like conceptually, there's not a reason to feel negatively about it at all, especially if the person helming the project is the person who helmed the original, and they know very much what made those games what they are, what made those games loved by so many people, and being able to retain the essence of that, because I think that is what you're really looking for. Now, that's not to say that people who it's not to say that spiritual successors made by admirers of those people can't be good too. And honestly, I think that they're great because even if it's not the same person making that spiritual successor, I think that a tribute to great games is also really cool as well. What do you think, Shanee?
I mean, my first episode on this podcast, I talked about Xenoblade Chronicles X, which is a spiritual successor.
Oh, you did talk about that.
Well, that's technically in the same franchise, though.
It is technically...
Like, yes, it's very different, but
It's technically in the Xeno franchise, yes. But, I mean, it still is a spiritual successor to the first Xenoblade Chronicles, because there is Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
How would you feel if somebody...
I would call it a spin-off more than I would call it a successor.
It's a spiritual successor.
How would you feel if somebody...
They call it a spiritual successor.
If somebody was like, I really like...
Monolith calls it that? Yeah. Well, you said they, so...
How would you feel if somebody was like, I really like Xenoblade, and I'm going to make a game that's basically Xenoblade with a different name? How'd you feel about that?
It depends if they did it well or not. I'm
That's fair.
Just be
That's
honest.
fair. Yeah.
If it's done poorly, meh.
Yeah. Well,
You
I
could've
mean,
not.
true for, I guess that rings true for any game, but because I think that's more along the lines of what Tom might be talking about. Like with Bloodstained and...
I mean, I just, in general, because we've seen it done poorly, we've seen it done well. There's the crowdfunding element that's attached to almost all of these games.
Yeah.
Just in general, we're for it, we're against it.
Didn't
somewhere in the middle.
Isn't Mighty Number 9 the game that killed crowdfunding for you?
Yeah, it definitely put a bit of a strain on my willingness to fund any other games.
Yeah.
Not to say that I won't ever again, but I think I can't remember the other game that's doing this. It's recent, but like with Mighty Number 9, there are people that just last week are getting their bonuses for that game.
Sure.
They're and they also announced a sequel, not a sequel. They announced another game from the same team before that game was even out.
Right.
And that happened recently too. I can't remember what game it was though. They announced Red Ash before Mighty Number 9 was even out, before it was even close to out. And I think that's kind of shitty.
I think
deliver on what you've been paid to deliver first.
I also think that we all have a very good opinion of Road Redemption.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and that's done to the same people.
Yeah,
I'm not good at it, but I like it.
It's a fantastic tribute to what is, what was one of my favorite series as a kid. And it holds a lot of the things that made Road Rash really cool to me at the time, and kind of updates it with more of that. I think it improves upon Road Rash. I think Road Redemption is a better Road Rash than any other Road Rash. Sure.
And I think that's rare.
Yeah. I almost said Road Rash Double Dash, but I know that's not what that one was called.
That would be fucking rad, though. Swapping out.
I feel like that's what it... Well, that's not what it was, but...
Yeah.
It had sidecars in it.
I guess to end the topic, what is... We've seen things over the past couple of years like Final Fantasy VII Remake, right?
Sure.
And then this year, from Blue Point, we saw Shadows of the Colossus.
Right.
I think a lot of people are really excited for both of those, myself included. What is something that is yet to be announced that you would like to see remade?
God damn. I feel like I was just thinking about this recently. I don't know. I think, there are a lot of games that I would like to have remade. But I think that if I were to really think about it, there are certain games that I'm not sure that I'd want to go back to now. But I will say this though, if Capcom was like, "Hey guys, you guys remember Dino Crisis? Well, we're doing that again." I would love to see a remake of Dino Crisis.
And would you want that in like the Resident Evil remake style, or would you want like a completely just new thing?
I don't know. Because like I thought that I was over that control style like after Resident Evil 4. I was like, this is what I want these games to be now.
So you're not talking about necessarily the tank controls. You're talking more about the fixed camera angles.
Yeah. But I think that
because remake controls just with a stick.
Yeah.
Not tank controls.
But although I can say at the time though, I feel like I could go back to the original controls of Dino Crisis and be okay with it.
Yeah.
But I would love to see Dino Crisis like updated to, what we can do now.
Sure.
Like those dinosaurs would look fucking sweet.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Between like Horizon and Monster Hunter and all that, like you can make a good-looking dinosaur now.
Yeah.
Monster
Hunter has those good-looking dinosaurs.
It does.
I think I don't know. I think that there's just there's so much that's out right now.
Yeah.
That it's kind of hard to like really dig back and think about like games that I haven't seen in a while. There are some racing games that I'd like to I would be interested to see brought into the 21st century. Like it would be cool to have like Rad Racer. I'd like to see what that would be like, and I feel like it would be very close to like Outrun, but who cares?
Yeah.
I would very much like them to take one more shot at Final Fight, like just one more try.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Because we had Final Fight. I I'm not familiar how you say it because I remember it was Final at the time. It was Final Fight. I thought it was Final Fight X. Now I don't know if it's Final Fight Cross or whatever.
I'm not positive.
But that was the one that came out like in like early to mid 2000s.
Yeah.
That just fucking tanked.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see them do that one where fucking Fighting Force, like a remake.
It's funny you say that. I was going to bring up Fighting Force.
Yeah.
I think a remake of Fighting Force would be cool. I think even better than that, and I know I've talked about it on the show a few times now, I only recently found out, I've known Fighting Force since it came out. I only recently found out that Fighting Force was intended to be a Streets of Rage sequel.
Yeah.
That
would be cool
Sega
too.
didn't like the fact that they wanted to publish it on all platforms, so they had to change it last minute. So yeah, Streets of Rage would be cool.
Can I include reboots in this?
Yeah, include whatever you want.
Condemned.
Condemned reboot would be cool.
Ooh.
I would like to see Condemned come back.
I feel like it would be less successful now.
Probably. And I also think that I'm pretty sure that if it did come back, it would be a VR game.
Yeah. Shanae, what you want?
First one that popped in my head, to be honest, was Fatal Frame.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think Ryan could handle that.
I could barely handle it at the fucking time, dude. Fatal Frame 2 scared the shit out of me. But I'd try it though.
Yeah, I think Fatal Frame would be really, really fun to
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
Fatal Frame. Cool.
I think it'd be really easy to port into a pretty, like, decently successful VR game.
Yeah.
I would like to see that. I think that'd be. I'm thinking
Yeah, that would probably work pretty well.
it'll work extremely well.
You could do that on Rails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see Fatal Frame
And
come
then
back.
the second one that popped in my head was, and probably because Berto's been playing Knights of the Republic Online. KOTOR 1 and 2 is like a bundle
Yeah.
remake, or just even a remastered thing of that. That's basically, I just want a remastered of that, actually.
Because they play fine.
Yeah.
They play wonderfully.
I think those games would look. I think they could make those games look really good now.
I mean,
Yeah.
they made online look amazing.
Oh yeah,
So,
that's a great MMO.
And
Yeah.
they can, if they could do that in MMO, like a standalone game, could do amazingly well.
Yeah.
So I think mine, other than Streets of Rage, they've already tried twice and it doesn't work. But a new Turok.
Yes.
A new
More
Turok.
dinos, all dinos.
Yes.
Like,
Guns made out of
Just
dinos.
remake the first game.
Or the second. Either one.
Yeah.
I mean, the first one's definitely got more dinos.
Yeah.
But yeah, they tried
to-
remaking it with the GameCube era, and they tried remaking it on 360, and like neither game took off real well.
Yeah. Now because I'm thinking about like Turok 2 and how cool the cerebral bore would look now.
Yeah.
It would look fucking sick now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would be very much into I would very much be into like Turok 2. I can't remember if
You give it to Machine Games.
Turok 2 had competitive multiplayer, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Still does. You can buy the Turok 2 on PC now and still play multiplayer on it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
You know what game would also be super easy to turn into a semi-decent VR game?
What?
Echo the Dolphin.
Echo.
Or Echo the Dolphin. Echo the Dolphin.
Nah, that game sucks.
I don't want that. I hate Echo.
Echo sucks.
You got to remember, Echo came out when like dolphins were the in thing, right?
Yeah, like that was very
Lisa
much
Frank
Lisa
was
Frank,
blowing
yeah.
up and fucking.
You say that like dolphins have stopped being the in thing.
Okay, yeah, but like Lisa Frank isn't what it once was.
Yeah.
There is no longer a Flipper series on TV, which
No.
at the time there was a new Flipper show going on.
And there was a Flipper movie too.
Yeah, like it's yeah. No, thank you.
Nah, thanks.
Okay.
I'm unapologetically shutting that down because that's
So Ryan, you won trivia earlier in the episode. What is something that you've been into or just want to talk about? Doesn't have to be games related.
sure. So I don't know. Like you guys are probably like at least like faintly aware of this, but I'm actually I consider myself to be a fan of pro wrestling.
Oh yeah.
And I've recently been watching Glow on Netflix.
I don't know what that is.
I don't either.
Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. It's basically based on it's based on this real life thing from the 80s where this.
Oh, I've seen the splash screen come up.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was about wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's based the premise is it's based on this real life thing where this promoter was like, he's like, I want to do a wrestling show that's nothing but women. And there's a documentary that's also on Netflix about it. But the show itself is actually it's a really fun thing to watch. Like I think even as somebody who doesn't enjoy wrestling very much, you know, I think that, you know, you could probably be into it just because the story is really.
Is it sexy?
Well, I guess that depends on how you define sexy, Tom.
Okay.
You know,
So glow, huh?
you know, yeah. It's a really fun show. It's got Alison Brie, Mark Maron.
Ooh.
I love Alison Brie.
Yeah, she's
Love her.
she's pretty much like what I consider to be the main character of that show.
Is she isn't so? I see a lot of gifs of her like being in a bra, and it's a show that I'm not familiar with. Is it that show? Is she in a bra a lot?
I think I saw her.
No, that's an older show. I know which gift you're talking about.
No, there's like multiple ones
Oh.
where she's like in different bras.
Got
I've
it.
seen her in a bra once that I can remember on that show. So.
Any final words before we close it out?
Yeah, Tom, I gotta say, I think this is the first time, in almost 2 years of doing this show, that we'd had what I consider to be like a philosophical discussion about video games, and that's really cool.
No way. We've gone deep before.
Not like this.
Balls deep.
I feel like this is probably the most like one of the more in-depth conversations that we've had during this time, and like I'm basically trying to say that your format was really neat, and I liked it.
Thank you.
I think it was just the most structured, so we noticed how far it was kind of going.
Sure.
Actually, can I finish?
Ryan, you only get one Can I Finish per episode.
So I just don't like her
Bam, bam, bam.
I don't like her undermining me in front of the fans.
I mean,
Oh my God.
we can adjust things. If we choose this format, we can adjust things and change how Can I Finish works.
Yeah.
But my thought was you get the question right, you get one Can I Finish per episode.
For sure.
Because if Shanee's not talking for like 30 minutes or whatever, that's going to be kind of weird.
Yeah.
Um,
That'd be real cool though.
So this has been episode 98 of the Save Continue podcast. Like I said, you can find us all over the place. Email us questions, thoughts, concerns, whatever you'd like at savecontinuepodcast@gmail.com. My name is Tommy Shelby. Ryan Robinson, Shanee Howard. Beautiful babies.
I'm quite cute.
And we're out.
Bye.
Next week.